Two men are sitting before judges, both charged with murder. One receives a life sentencing in prison, while the other is released. Why is this? Superior Criminal Court judges utilize special instruments called factors when determining the final sentence of the defendant of a criminal case. There are two types of factors: aggravating and mitigating. An aggravating factor is a detail of a case that would increase the severity of a criminal act, while a mitigating factor, in comparison, is a detail of a case that would lessen the severity of a criminal act.
If the severity of the crime is impacted, criminal judges may feel influenced to change the outcome of the case to match the severity. The law requires criminal judges to use a set list of factors for every case, and the lists are the same depending on the region. The list that New Jersey law enforcement are required to use according to New Jersey Code of Criminal Justice Section 2C44-1 contain 15 aggravating factors and 14 mitigating factors. In another study performed by the Minnesota Sentencing Guidelines Commission, when confronted with the aggravating factor of the defendant having acted with deliberate cruelty, the judge, as a result, increased the defendant's sentence by 90 months. Now, why is this even important? Well, given that these aggravating and mitigating factors could potentially add or subtract years off of time a defendant spends in prison, it is critical to have a comprehensive understanding of the factors demonstrated by these studies. Yet, even though it's vital to research this topic, there's a lack of research specifically in New Jersey relating to this inquiry. Thus, this research seeks to remedy this research gap by answering the question, which aggravating and mitigating factors have the most influence when determining the sentencing length of defendants of homicide and attempted homicide cases in New Jersey criminal court. First, a quantitative constant analysis was performed utilizing 14 homicide cases from New Jersey occurring between the years 2023 and 2025. This constant analysis was utilized to identify which factors, both aggravating and mitigating, applied to each case. It is to be noted that cases can have more than one factor. The results of the quantitative constant analysis was organized into this bar graph as you see now. This bar graph reveals that the aggravating factor that was present in the most cases was factor 1. Offense was committed in an especially heinous, cruel, or depraved manner, where 13 out of the 14 cases, or 92.9% of the cases, had this factor present. This result relates back to the Henderson study of Roth versus Iowa, who also found this factor had immense influence. None of the defendants in these cases containing aggravating factors were released, further highlighting the drastic influence these aggravating factors had on sentencing length. Additionally, cases with factor 1 as an aggravating factor had the most life sentences out of any of the other factors. Now, in comparison, the most prevalent mitigating factor was factor 5. The victim of the defendant's conduct induced or facilitated its commission, where 2 of the 14 cases, or 14.3% of the cases, had this factor present. When comparing the two bar graphs in the quantitative constant analysis, the immense difference in frequencies can be observed. There were significantly more aggravating factors present in the cases than mitigating factors. Then, a quantitative multiple linear regression test was performed to produce statistical data. This test was the most suitable study because of the immense number of independent variables. The quantitative multiple linear regression test was utilized to analyze the factors through statistical means. After performing the multiple linear regression test for aggravating factors, the aggravating factor with the greatest coefficient value was determined to be factor 1. The offense was committed in an especially heinous, cruel, or depraved manner. This was evidenced by its immense coefficient estimate of 205.95, which is greater than any other coefficient for any other aggravating factor. Now, in comparison, it was found that the most influential mitigating factor was factor 12, the willingness of a defendant to cooperate with law enforcement authorities, with the highest coefficient value of any mitigating factor of 203.71. This study fills a critical research gap which to date has not been addressed in New Jersey. The results obtained from the study have crucial implications for the judiciary, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and defendants throughout New Jersey. For the prosecutor, knowing which aggravating and mitigating factors are the most influential is extraordinarily helpful in determining sentencing recommendations to the judge. Similarly, for the defense attorney, this information will be vital to decide which mitigating factors to pursue and promote to minimize the time of imprisonment for the client. Further, this information would also be incredibly beneficial to the defendants themselves on trial to defend whether or not to accept a plea deal. Finally, the judges may also find it advantageous to themselves in doing their own sentencing research to know how their peers have weighed such aggravating and mitigating factors in other cases. Although this research does address gaps in current literature, there are limitations to this approach taken. This study extracted data relating to each of the factors from only press releases from the public. This is because private data on each of the cited cases is accessible to the public. Further, although the study analyzed which factors were the most influential upon sentencing length in the past, the sentencing of every defendant is ultimately up to the individual judge's discretion. Lastly, the results found in the study are limited to homicide and attempted homicide cases only. Numerous other possibilities for further research arise from the study. Because the study pertains only to New Jersey and its criminal laws, there still remains a gap in research on other regions and even outside the United States that have different aggravating and mitigating factors. Because the law is ever changing, the research on this topic should be kept current as well.